When it comes to proper pruning, the process promotes the health of our trees and shrubs. Yet the key is to know when and when not to prune to achieve a great result without harming our plants. From the East Coast to the West Coast, today we visit with two experts to take a closer look at the do's and don'ts of making the right cut. And I'll talk to you about why tree topping is one of the biggest crimes against horticulture. Patty shows us how to train apple trees for tight spaces, and Chef Nathan Lyon uses another type of fruit, the apricot, to make one of his great dishes. All that and more today on Growing a Greener World.
This program was funded by the following.
Fiskars designs ergonomic products that empower gardeners to accomplish their goals. At Fiskars, we believe that all things, even the simplest, can be made better and smarter.
This program is sponsored in part by Burpee Home Gardens, providing garden-ready vegetable and herb plants, backed by the 125-year heritage of Burpee. Available at your local garden center.
At Liquid Fence, we work in harmony with nature to help protect your garden, your family, and your pets with all-natural, environmentally friendly animal repellents and lawn and garden products. Liquid Fence, all-natural products to help you address some of nature's most difficult problems.
At Subaru, we care about preserving the environment. That's why we build our vehicles in zero landfill plants, which produce less landfill waste in a year than a single-family household in a day. Subaru, a proud sponsor of Growing a Greener World.
When it comes to knowing the cause and effect of making the right pruning cut, this expert not only has the track record, but the garden to back it up. Along with her many horticultural talents, Tracy D. Sabato-Ost holds claim to one of the most popular gardening books ever written, entitled The Well-Tended Perennial Garden. It's widely considered as the Bible of perennial maintenance. She's a veteran and in-demand garden designer, writer, and international presenter, and award-winning triathlete. With all she has going on, she still manages to keep an impeccable garden pruned to perfection.
I guess I became an expert with pruning perennials because I started with a small article for the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, and it's such an interesting and dynamic topic that they felt that I should do a larger piece for fine gardening, and so I continued to do some research and work with it, and then it led to my book, The Well-Tended Perennial Garden. And because it's such an interesting and variable topic, what to prune, when to prune, how to prune, will vary from region to region, with the age of the plant, with soil fertility, and even just with, our normal gardeners' objectives. So it involved looking at about 400 to 500 species and measuring them, recording the height that they were when they were pruned, and then what was most interesting is going back and looking and comparing pruned plants to unpruned plants and seeing what the result was. And that work had never been done and never been recorded, and I think that's what earned me, the title of the Queen of Deadheading, or Tracy Scissorhands.
Now, just about everywhere I go, people stop and want to know more about pruning, right, Tracy? I'm
Absolutely.
sure you encounter the same thing. But people seem to have this fear of it, call it prunophobia, and really nothing ventured, nothing gained. There are a lot of reasons why we should be pruning.
There are, and people are afraid. I think they're afraid they're going to kill the plants, but in the case, especially with perennials, they're extremely forgiving, and pruning gives us so many choices. So I urge people to experiment, have fun, and give it a try.
Yeah, worst case scenario maybe is that you cut off the blooming opportunity.
Absolutely. You're not going to kill the plant. So many times people think they're going to kill
Right.
it, but really maybe you'll just prevent flowering that season.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have an example here of a couple wonderful plants, the poppy, for example. Now, would you prune that?
No, this is a case now, and that's a great question, Joe. So, as important to know what to prune is what not to prune. And certain plants like the annual poppy will form a beautiful seed head, so we want that to remain, and also it will self-sow, so we want that spontaneity in the garden. One of the perennials like columbine, the aquilegia, very attractive seed heads again, and I like to let that sow itself freely about the garden, so we don't prune. Also, we wouldn't prune if we want to attract birds and bring wildlife into the garden, so the ornamental seed heads is another good reason not to prune.
Great food source.
Exactly, exactly.
Now, on the other hand, you have the salvia here, and this would be a classic case of pruning that you would do.
Absolutely. This is Salvia nemorosa, the perennial salvia, and this is a plant where if we're pruning, we can actually prolong bloom, sometimes by 2 months, or we can cause a repeat of bloom. And people often ask, well, where do I cut? Where do I make the pruning cut? And so we look for the old or the dead head, and we come in and we'd cut just above the lateral 2 leaves. And so what we would have here is flowering on those 2 buds.
Okay, so these would come up and make new flower buds.
Absolutely. And then eventually, we might go down once more to these 2, just depending on how the plant is responding. And then we'll get new growth, Joe, that develops at the base. And we'll eventually take this entire plant, cut it to the base, and that'll cause a repeat bloom. And so what we're doing is we're improving the appearance, we're prolonging bloom, we're causing repeat bloom, all by proper pruning.
So Tracy, we just came off of reasons to deadhead to produce more flowering. What are we doing here? We're about to prune these.
We're pruning asters, or we can do this with many of our autumn flowering plants, and some of the summer flowering plants is pruning prior to flowering or preemptive pruning. And we do that in an effort to reduce the height to eliminate the need for staking. I found most people don't like to stake and don't do a very good job of it. So this will eliminate that little maintenance chore, as well as in many cases it'll delay flowering. So particularly on some of the summer flowering plants, we can go in and we'll have a 2, maybe 3 week delay in flowering. So we can do that and maybe time the flowering of that perennial with a special event or a photo shoot or something in that realm, yes. So in this case, we'd come in and just go in and just cut perhaps right to here and cut back by half. And what's fun too, Joe, is on some of the outer stems, you might come in even a little lower. So here's where we might do our 2/3, pruning that a little bit lower, pruning this stem here a little lower, and bringing this one a little bit higher. And that way we get this kind of a gradation in height, and everything's not flowering at the same height. And so we'd come in these inner stems by half, and then this outer stem bringing it down maybe a little bit lower. And this will all fill in, and we won't have those ugly legs that we often see on asters in particular, where there's no leaves and it's looking very unsightly.
And you've also cut some of these back right over here.
I have, yeah.
And
so
it's
as
amazing
an example,
how vigorous these respond to that simple cut. And how long ago did you cut these, Tracy?
This was just about a week ago, and isn't that fun, Joe? Look how you can see the pruning cut and see all this new growth that's starting to come and fill in. And again, I think this gives people just a little incentive, a little inspiration, if you will, to do this pruning and to see the results. And I did this here earlier because this foxglove, this is a perennial foxglove, and it I wanted to make sure that we could see the flowering, and so the aster had gotten so large. So there's another reason to prune, is to make space for things that are, flowering or happening now in the garden. And then as this finishes, I'll deadhead it, and this aster will continue to grow, and it will fill in the space, and it'll flower later.
But we haven't talked about the spring flowering plants, and you don't necessarily use your common pruners for that, do you?
No. I like to use the Okatsuni head shear, so it's a really lightweight and sharp.
Tracy scissor hands, by the way.
Yes.
Now I know why.
And so we can do this pruning, this shearing after flowering on many of the common flowering spring plants like the rock cress or candy tuft iberis, or some of the pinks, the dianthus, or one that a lot of people have, which is phlox subulata, or the moss phlox.
Yes.
So we can come in and really just go in, and we're shearing this by a half, and we can come in and shape it at the same time. So we just come in and cut, and so you'll notice, we're not getting directly above like the lateral leaves like we talked about earlier, and that's fine because these plants will fill in quickly and they'll look beautiful the rest of the season.
So by cutting back, we're not stimulating new growth. We're not going to get new flowers because these are spring flowering and we're past that time.
Right.
We're really just creating then a more tidy plant and one that is not going to flop open like we tend to see so often where you have that big space in the center.
Right, that unsightly hole that develops that we're used to seeing, particularly with that moss phlox that so many people love to grow.
Yeah.
So it's just, it's a wonderful technique and it's so fast.
Yeah. Designers and horticulturalists across the country are passionate about the art and science of proper plant placement and pruning. And around Santa Barbara, California, landscape architect, horticultural instructor, and overall garden wise guy, Billy Goodnick, is a strong advocate for putting the right plant in the right place for protecting them and the environment.
I was listening to an interview with Joan Rivers and she was explaining how she makes fun of everything because if she didn't laugh, she would probably start to cry. That's what I like to do with Crimes Against Horticulture. I like to poke fun and have a little fun with the things people do in their gardens, but there's really a point to be made that there's also some environmental harm that comes along with those practices. A lot of the situations that end up being crimes against horticulture really start because people don't understand the habits of a plant. Every plant has its genetic destiny. It's hardwired to grow a certain way. You can't have a redwood tree and through wishful thinking hope that it's going to behave like a petunia in a window box. So the first thing you do is you try to understand the plant that you're about to put in the ground. Read the tag that's on the label. Look it up in a reliable reference book or ask a nurseryman how this plant is going to grow. The key thing is to understand how big a plant is going to get and put it in a place where it can do that and can do it naturally so you don't have to shape it and force it into these unusual shapes that people come up with. Yeah, it seems like everywhere I go in the country there's sort of that plant that everybody loves to hack, and in Southern California it's bougainvillea. Most of them get, 15, 20 feet across, and yet people plant them for quick fill and they put them 3 or 4 feet from each other, which is kind of ridiculous. What ends up happening is to keep them the right size, they cut back all the tip growth, and that's why people choose bougainvillea in the first place, is because that's where all the gorgeous flowers are. So it's just this continuing process of making the plant uglier, shortening its lifespan by continually pruning it, and just having a life of maintenance just doesn't make sense. Putting the wrong shrub in the wrong place is bad enough, but when you put the wrong tree in the wrong place, the problems just compound. Surface roots will start raising concrete in a sidewalk. It's a safety hazard. Around your house, it can bust the foundation or take out your patio. Yeah, when you have a tree in this sort of situation, a lot of people say, well, that's okay, we can do some root pruning, which is expensive to begin with, but on top of that, it can often destabilize the tree, and that doesn't make any sense. Okay, my idea of a perfect plant is a plant that gets as high as you need it to grow and stops, gets as wide as the space allowed, stops, provides fruit, flowers, fragrance, and in a pinch, it'll run down to Ben & Jerry's for you at midnight and pick out some chunky monkeys. So, I don't think I'll ever find that plant, but wouldn't it be wonderful?
Now, where one gardener may like a closely cropped or shaped plant or tree through selective pruning or shearing, others, like Billy, prefer a more natural form. And I think it's a safe bet. We all like his idea about it being able to go out and get us ice cream. And there's another thing nearly all of us can agree on. The heavy hand of a chainsaw can be over the top. They're everywhere, trees disfigured and dying from years of abuse. Known as tree topping, it's the most harmful tree pruning practice known. Yet despite more than 25 years of spoken and written information by countless other like-minded professionals, it remains a common practice. According to the International Society of Arboriculture, the most common reason given for topping is to reduce the size of a tree, either because it's become too large for the property or a perception that it may pose a hazard. Ironically, topping is neither a viable solution to reducing size or hazard. When a tree is topped, up to 100% of the leaf-bearing crown is removed. And since leaves are the food source for any tree, the absence of the leaves can lead to temporary or even permanent starvation. As a defensive action, the starving tree responds by rapidly sending out multiple shoots from latent buds below each cut. This action is the tree's survival mechanism to put out a new flush of leaves as soon as possible. But if the tree doesn't have sufficient stored energy reserves to respond in this way, it will seriously harm the tree, even leading to its premature demise. As new shoots grow to desperately replace their food-making factory, they do so rapidly, sending up numerous water sprouts. In some species, these new shoots can grow up to 20 feet in a year. Trees will grow back rapidly, and they don't slow until they reach about their original size. The new growth that rapidly ascends from latent buds just below each cut is only anchored in the outermost layer of the parent branch. These weak attachments will never have the structural integrity of the original branch and can break off easily, even years later, when they are large and heavy. When the occasion arises and it becomes necessary to modify the height or spread of a tree, consult or hire a professional arborist. An arborist will determine the type of pruning that is necessary to maintain and improve the health, appearance, and safety of your trees. Certified or professional arborists won't use tree-damaging spikes unless they're removing the tree completely. They won't list tree topping as a service in the phone book, and they'll never recommend it to you as a solution, because it's not. So often when we garden in small spaces, we tend to stick with plants that stay rather compact, and I get that, but unfortunately, a lot of times we shy away from plants we would love to grow, like fruit trees, because we're afraid they'll get too big. But you know what? We don't have to. There are many dwarf varieties today and techniques to keep them growing in tight spaces. Now, the process might sound complicated, but it's not, and Patty's going to show us how to do it.
The art of espalier. You know, it can be really intimidating for some people. But basically, all it is training a fruit tree on one plane. And it's a great idea if you don't have a lot of space and you still want to have apple trees or plum trees or any type of fruit tree, to train it along a fence or some wire like I have here. What you want to do is you want to find a dwarf or a semi-dwarf fruit tree and make sure that it's got lots of branches for you to work with. Next, you have to, of course, pick where you want to grow this tree. It's great to do them up against a fence or a wall, but if you don't have a fence or a wall to put it up against, you can put 2 poles and then start attaching wire or some electrical conduit like I have here. You want to make sure that the supports are going to be sturdy enough to hold up those amazing fruits that you're going to have growing on your tree in no time. Now, I purchased this tree at the local nursery. It's a semi-dwarf apple tree, and it's got a lot of branches for me to work with. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to pick the branches that I want to start training horizontally. And there are a lot of different types of shapes that you can do with an espalier. I'm just going to do a horizontal shape. So I'm picking branches that are going to be able to fit horizontally along the conduit that I have here and also the wire that I've already attached. And we're going to start with the bottom branches. Now, before I prune any branches, I want to attach the branches horizontally to my supports. And then I want to prune all of the branches that I'm not going to use anymore. To train your tree branches, all you have to do is bend the tree branch down and tie it off with some horticultural tape. Over time, you're going to come back and you're going to tie it straighter and straighter along the support. All right, now that everything is secure, we are going to prune the branches. Before you start pruning, make sure you have a good pair of sharp pruners. It's going to help maintain the health of your tree. And all you want to do is cut the branch flush with the tree trunk. We're going to prune this one, these here, these, and finally this one. That's all there is to it. Now, periodically throughout the growing season, you're going to want to come and check on your tree, prune off any branches, any stray branches that are growing off the trunk, and continue to train the branches along your vertical support. And in no time, you will have a surprisingly large harvest in a small space.
From apples to apricots picked fresh from the garden, that's what Chef Nathan Lyon is using today. You know, I never seem to be around at the right times when Nathan is making up these fabulous dishes, but I think today I hit the jackpot because I see apricots and cinnamon and cherry, so something tells me we've got a dessert dish going on.
That's right. You're exactly right, Joe. What I'm doing is I'm picking out these apricots, which are right in season right now. The thing about apricots is you almost always see them with cherries, and these are called stone fruit. Anything with a pit, so a cherry has a pit, or a stone, because it's hard as a stone. Next thing goes apricots, the next thing is nectarines, and then peaches. The way that I'm picking them out right now is I'm actually looking at the top of the apricot. It's really this beautiful apricot color, whereas something like, say, this one has a bit more yellow, lighter in color. It's not quite ready to go, so I'll put this one in a brown paper bag and just let it sit right on the counter, and it'll naturally ripen.
All right.
Okay.
So what are we making?
We're gonna make these vanilla bean poached apricots. Yeah, which is pretty insane. With fresh vanilla bean, not the artificial stuff, and top it off with some sliced almonds. And it's just so simple, and it's really fast, and it's just a wonderful way to point out the amazing flavors of apricots, because apricots actually get better as you cook them rather than raw.
Okay, well, let's start.
Actually, Joe, if you can do me a favor, about an inch of water in this pot would be great.
Okay.
Okay. And then when you're done with that, if you can tear these apricots in half, with the brute strength of Joe, just tear them right in half, okay? And I'm gonna show you how to make a simple syrup. It's really super fast.
And these are going in here.
That's correct. Just tear them right in half. There's a pit, and just put them right on in there.
All right.
Okay. And then also dump in that brown sugar. Okay, the brown sugar gives a certain amount of sweetness. And then what I do is I use these beautiful vanilla beans. Now check this out. Look at these vanilla beans. You gotta come in. And you can smell them. When you come in, you just smell them. This is actually a vanilla pod. And the reason why they're so expensive, because you see them at the grocery store, the reason why they're so expensive is because it comes from an orchid. It's the one thing that we can actually eat from an orchid, the thousands of varieties of orchids. And you pick them green, you have to let them sit out in the sun, and you wrap them up in burlap for like 5 days. And then you have to ship them from Tahiti and, you know, Madagascar and all these different places. I would charge you $100 a vanilla bean if I had to put that labor in.
But I'd do it for free if I could go to Tahiti to get them.
I mean, it's a good thought. So this is great. You have the water, you have the apricots, just dump in the brown sugar.
Do that now?
Absolutely.
Okay. Crank up the heat?
Please, please do. And the way to get the vanilla beans, the actual beans, out of this pod is I cut it in half to make it a little easier. And I'll take a nice sharp knife and I'll score it or cut it directly down about halfway through. Okay. And you kind of open it up like a little book. And inside are these teeny, teeny, tiny little beans. Just like this. And you scrape out these beans. And these right here are the actual beans. This is the vanilla beans. So when you're thinking about, you know, desserts, creme brulee, ice cream, this is what you're thinking about. Okay?
Yeah, those are the little black flecks that we have in that vanilla bean ice cream that my kids tend to just devour.
Absolutely right. You know, if you want, I do have vanilla bean ice cream, only real vanilla bean ice cream, okay?
Yeah.
If it's artificial, like for example, if it's artificial, it doesn't come from vanilla beans. And if you're gonna use, in baking goods, extract, make sure it reads pure vanilla extract.
Okay.
Not imitation.
All right.
All right. Now this is exactly the way we want it to be. I mean, the apricots are poached. A lot of the liquid has escaped. You can smell it from my whole kitchen here. And the liquid's gone down, so actually when it bubbles, it doesn't look like water boiling. It looks more like syrup boiling. This is exactly the way we want. Grab the ice cream. Now's the time.
Just say the word.
All right, word. That's it. And if you want to, you can just spoon right on top. And again, the leftover stuff, we gotta keep that. It's like liquid gold. It's so good. A couple things that go really well with both apricots and vanilla. Cherries. There's nothing wrong with a little garnish of cherry right on the side. And a touch of crunch as well. Almonds, some slivered almonds go well. So you have this like cold, warm thing going on, and it's just, yeah, it's really, really good.
Here.
There we go.
But I get the point, and that's a very good one.
All right.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a lot of effort, so dig in.
Okay.
Whew.
Oh boy, I'm so excited. I think my hand is shaking.
I mean, potluck or not, dinner or not, breakfast or not, this is good food.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Eat up, America.
Well, after today, I hope we've helped you understand that putting the right plant or tree in the right place and making the right cut can help you cut down on your ongoing maintenance and expense. But if you have any more questions about pruning, we have some great articles and links on our website, along with Chef Nathan Lyon's full cooking video and his recipe. The address is simple. It's growingagreenerworld.com. I'm Joe Lample. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you back here next time for more Growing a Greener World.
This program was funded by the following.
Fiskars designs ergonomic products that empower gardeners to accomplish their goals. At Fiskars, we believe that all things, even the simplest, can be made better and smarter.
This program is sponsored in part by Burpee Home Gardens, providing garden-ready vegetable and herb plants, backed by the 125-year heritage of Burpee. Available at your local garden center.
At Liquid Fence, we work in harmony with nature to help protect your garden, your family, and your pets with all-natural, environmentally friendly animal repellents and lawn and garden products. Liquid Fence, all-natural products to help you address some of nature's most difficult problems.
At Subaru, we care about preserving the environment. That's why we build our vehicles in zero landfill plants, which produce less landfill waste in a year than a single-family household in a day. Subaru, a proud sponsor of Growing a Greener World.
And there's another reason for pruning that we haven't talked about yet that might come in handy for you too, and that is to open up the view.
Hey, I look pretty good on TV. Maybe I should be on TV.
We'll catch it. So. We'll add you in post.
Keep your day job, Carl. You're best behind the camera.
To order the Green Gardener's Guide for information on gardening and living green for $16.95 plus shipping and handling, visit growingagreenerworld.com/books.
This program is presented by Blue Ridge PBS,